welcome to Served Up. This podcast is where hospitality meets leadership and where we take an honest look at the business of beverage. I'm Bridget Albert. I've spent my career building cocktail programs, mentoring rising talent, judging competitions, and advocating for women in our industry. I'm joined by my co-host, Eric Heemer, one of only 5 people in the world to hold both the Master Sommelier and Master of Wine titles. His depth of knowledge and global perspective brings tremendous insight to every conversation. This is Served Up. Hey, y'all, it's Bridget here. Eric and I had the opportunity to chat with the CEO of Sovereign Brands, Brett Berish. Brett is one of those rare people in the spirits industry who leads with both passion and genuine hospitality. He's built and represented brands that just don't sit on that back bar. They tell stories, create experiences, and truly bring people together in meaningful ways. What's always stood out to me about Brett is his ability to balance innovation with authenticity while never losing sight of the relationships that make the industry so very special. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite Bumbu Rum cocktail, and enjoy the show. Brett, welcome to Served Up. Really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Bridget, for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Would love to know your early experiences or influences that really sparked your interest in beverage and entrepreneurship.
That's a great question. I don't know where the entrepreneurship came from. I shouldn't say that. I've always been creative. I've always wanted to discover things. I think that when I look back at my life, the first thing I ever wanted to do was be an archaeologist. I wanted to find things. I wanted to explore things and look at things differently. My love for this industry started when I was in high school, and I realized basically then what my dad did for a living, and everyone thought it was so cool. He was in the liquor business. And I remember thinking to myself, if my family could be in any business, I would choose liquor or cars, because I figured I would get any car I wanted if my dad owned a dealership or something like that. But those two areas are probably, combine those two, and that's me.
I believe I knew your father. He was Barry Berish. Is that
Barry
correct?
Berish.
Yes. He was with Jim Beam for many, many years.
Yeah, 40 plus years. He ran the company for probably half his life. Unfortunately, passed away about 2 years ago. But he was an amazing storyteller. He loved the industry. His eyes would light up when he talked about the industry. He goes way back with Harvey and Wayne and Mel, Dick. I think they would say he put them on the map when he decided to move distributorships and created California for them. And I remember being in high school, and I worked at a small distributor in Illinois doing stocking of boxes and display pieces and mirrors and putting them up everywhere. And I remember my father moved in Chicago distributorships, and I was fired that day.
Oh dear. Sorry to hear that.
Oh, no. It's part of the business.
It is indeed. And he was a really, really great fellow. I met him a couple of times back when I was in sales management, and I'm sorry to hear of his passing.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
So did you have any mentors or role models besides your father, who was a pretty good role model and mentor for you to have as you got into the beverage industry?
Mentors, this is going to sound strange, but I would say my mom. Even though my dad was in the liquor business, my mom is fearless. My mom she gets her set on doing something, she does it, and she'll go all in. She is my inspiration. She's 95 years old, will be 96 this year. She still rollerblades every day. She's tenacious. She's everything. Even though my father was in the liquor business, without her, I could never have done this. And I think when I think back on my career versus Barry, my father, he couldn't do what we did, meaning start a small company and grow it. What he could do is manage a big company. And I think when it comes to mentors, you need somebody who you can relate to, who's going through the same experience as you are. And that was one of the biggest differences in what I saw people in our industry and how we hire people, quite honestly, how we look at our industry. we're, as big as we have a partnership with Pernod Ricard, I don't think Alex would say as an example, he could run our business and I don't think I could run his business.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that you said your mom and go mom, go on those rollerblades. Oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
so amazing. How does your mom show up for you, Brett?
She's my supporter. Back in
Mhm.
the day, years ago, we had investors and they wanted to stop the company. And I remember it was in living in New York at the time. I was outside on Broome and Wooster Street telling my mom that they want to wind up the company. And she says, Brad, I'll sell my rings for you. I'll sell all my jewelry for you. And I
Wow.
said, oh, don't worry about it. I'll get through this. And she was there. She's always been there. You need somebody in your life who's there to pick you up, who's there to support you no matter what happens. And she's been that person my whole life. You need someone like that. So she's mine. No one else can have her, but she's my support.
I really love that. My mom does that for me as well as my dad. What is your mother's name?
Molly Bell. She's still on every email we send to the whole company. Back in the day when I had the brand Ace of Spades, Armand de
Mhm.
Brignac, she'd look in the phone book and call every single liquor store she could find just to ask for it, just to ask for it. So people would get acquainted with the name. And I'd give her thousands of retailers to call. I mean, she would do it. She would do it.
Oh my
Anything she could
gosh.
do to help, she would do it.
What a gal. What a gal. Well, hey, Molly. That's amazing. When did you decide to build Sovereign Brands? Tell us
Uh,
that story.
Yeah, I was the kid who had lots of ideas and never chose one. And I think that's the problem sometimes is when you have lots of ideas and lots of different directions. For me, I was afraid to pick one because what if that wasn't the right one? I wasted all this time. And I wasn't until my 30s where I quit my job. I told my brother, I'm going to do this no matter what. Do you want to in on this? And he said yes. And we started the company. But I love the liquor industry. I love brand building. I think the power brands are amazing. I remember being in high school and I wanted to do 100% agave before that even existed, way back when. I've always just had ideas. And we started the company with the intention of we're going to launch new brands, things that are different in this industry. We're going to hopefully get some attention on them. It's all about taste. And I've been doing it ever since, and we've been doing it ever since. And I think the one difference when I look back is I've never wanted to do any other idea since. So I've been completely content and happy in this industry, and I'll keep focusing on it.
Brett, can you tell us the first brand that you developed once you started Sovereign Brands?
So the first brand I like to say, it doesn't exist today. I'd like to say is my most successful brand because it taught me everything about the industry, the rights and the wrongs and what to do and what not to do. And it was a vodka. It was a vodka called Three, the number three. It was distilled from soy. I remember Maxim magazine called it the healthiest way to get shit faced. But it
Good.
was unique. It was different. It had a unique name, a different bottle. Back then, everyone was naming their brands after an animal, yellow tailed. It was always an animal and something else. This was just called the number three vodka. But it literally, I have to be honest, it taught me and my brother everything we do is based on that brand, meaning don't do it, try something different, pivot quickly. Sometimes having a plan is the worst idea because you got to pivot. You got to pivot constantly. And if you have a plan and you stick to it for a year or 6 months, you're now too late. You got to be able to move quickly and adapt quickly to what you see out there. And that's what we do.
That's great. What a great story. It's funny you should mention critter labels because it reminds me of the Grey Goose Sidney Frank story, which was another really good one, a brand that was inactive, idle, and Sidney Frank built it into the powerhouse brand that it is today. It was an
Yeah.
amazing
And
story.
I think Sidney Frank is the example for me would be that's in the distance mentor. That's somebody you could look at and say, look what he's done. Look what he did with Jägermeister. He took a stomach, it was good in Germany to settle your stomach and turn it into this brand that then the family took advantage of, from that sense and made it global. Look at Grey Goose and what he did. And that's the other thing is, and it made me appreciate the industry where Sidney Frank had 2 home runs, yet he had tons of other brands he created or started or imported, and they didn't work as well. None of them did. And it just shows this industry is really hard. And when I look back and see what we've accomplished, we've had 4, not 5 brands that have been successful. And that is unheard of. And it makes me appreciate every day that goes by, makes me appreciate what we've done to date and what we're doing.
Yeah, every step is a learning experience. I know
Correct.
I know you've had, several wine brands in the interim between 3 and present time, and I'd like to move up into the present and talk about, the number 1 rum brand in the world, Bumbu.
Yeah, amazing brand. We've always been told the shit we do doesn't work. It won't work. Back in the day when we launched Bumbu, everyone said, don't do it. Rum isn't growing. It's not going to grow. There is no such thing as quote unquote premium rum. And you tell me I can't do it, and I'm going to tell you I can, and I'm going to do it with or without you. So get on board. And today it's the number 1 premium rum in the world. We do more than anybody. And there's some other brands that were out there before us who had a head start, 10, 15-year head start, and we've surpassed them all. It's an amazing accomplishment. It's based on taste. That clear bottle that we call Bumbu Original is our hero. We've got 2 line expressions, 2 Bumbu Original, Bumbu XO, which is like a big fat cigar. It's big and bold. It's like a whiskey. And then we've got Bumbu Cream or Creme, which is our cream-based product, which I think tastes better than anybody's out there. It's in 100 plus countries today, and we are defining the category from a premium position. We have countries, Eric, where in Romania, and it's absurd, we're the single biggest brand at our price point or higher in any category.
Yeah,
So
it
we're
is
bigger than any whiskey brand, any vodka brand, any gin, any cognac, any liqueur at our price point or higher. And rum is the 7th, probably smallest category in that country.
mm,
So the brand is, and I think that's what I always think of brands as if you can make your own category. Patron was its own category. You never thought of Patron as tequila, it's just Patron. So that's our goal, is to try to create our own category, be bigger than the category.
that's amazing. And when did you start Bumbu?
It's about 9.5 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Think about all the brands that have been around for hundreds of years, and you've surpassed them all in 9.5 years.
Correct. And brands take time, and I think that's one of the things that it can be frustrating for people to understand, but it doesn't happen overnight. And if it does, you're the luckiest person in the world, because it's not normal. You look at great brands like Patron, it's a 40-year-old brand. It
Yeah.
took them years to grow that thing. I remember my dad, they were kicked out of Seagram's for being as the distributor, and Patron and the owners wanted to work with Jim Beam, and Jim Beam didn't even want them. So brands take time, and there's
Mhm.
no rush. You can't force it to happen sooner. And we're super proud that Bumbu can be in this many countries. We do more business. I bet you Canada becomes bigger than the United States in our rum business, which is amazing. Just on Bumbu, which is amazing. But it's happening everywhere, from the UK to Germany to Spain to Portugal, all over, on a brand that everybody told us don't do it. And
Mm.
but today you look at it, and we're the brand that everyone wants to chase, meaning, and now the rum category is growing, and we're growing it. And soon the goal is, I don't want to chase somebody else. I want to be chased.
That's a great statement. Can you tell us a little bit more about Bumbu itself? Like, where did you come up with the name?
To me, everything is critical. Taste is most important, but everything from name to package to storytelling to liquid is critical. Bumbu, the name, comes from the 16th century when merchants traveled the West Indies. They would drink rum, which they called grog, and they didn't like the taste of it. And they started playing around with adding other spices and ingredients to it, and they referred to that product as Bumbu. And we brought that back to life. We produce specifically our mainline original in Barbados. I would think most people don't know rum originated in Barbados. So to me, that's a wonderful storytelling. We use 8 different sugar canes from 8 different countries and distill it in Barbados. And Bumbu Original is this, to me, it's like if you had 10 people in a room and you wanted to taste it and write down what you tasted, you'd have 10 different answers. And that's what I wanted. I wanted something that's complex. I wanted something that the notes are different. I get people telling me, it tastes like banana. There is no banana in it. It doesn't exist, but that's what they feel, or that's what the brand emulates. that's where original came from. And then Bumbu XO, we wanted to create the opposite. We couldn't do it in Barbados because the taste profile just wouldn't come out that way. We ended up doing this in Panama with one specific sugar cane, aged up to 18 years, and then finished in ex sherry barrels, and that's Bumbu XO. And that one is the opposite of original. And I said earlier, it's more like a whiskey. It tastes like, it's got big old smoke notes. It's like an old shoe in some ways, but really different. And between those two SKUs, we think we can get everybody. And then the last one is Cream, which also comes from Panama. So it's a premium cream based product. It's phenomenal. And the way we get to creating products is taste, 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 taste. If my brand doesn't taste different than the best brand out there, I won't do it. I won't. My father, I think our smartest and best category that we know better than anybody is whiskey. And I've had a really hard time coming up with a whiskey that tastes better than the things out there I like. So it's not marketing that's going to get us there. It's taste profile that's going to get us there. If I can come up with something that tastes unique, I want to do it. And we've done that in the broader whiskey category with Scotch, with one of our new brands called the Deacon. But it always comes back to taste. And then we wanted a bottle that looks different, that acts different. There's a big X on the bottle. It's almost like X marks the spot, or it's the treasure. You're finding a treasure. It's got a big, long cork. If you ever see it, it's probably the biggest cork in the industry. And it makes you feel like you want to bite it and pull it out with your teeth like a pirate would. And then the stories in the back of the bottle where it comes from the West Indies, it comes from the Caribbean, and how it came about. But all those things, I hope the stories get told. I hope people learn and love the history of the brand. But more importantly, it's the taste. Taste wins. I'm not going to be able in my business. I can't over market. I can't market like Diageo. I can't market like Jim Beam, but I can make something that tastes better than their brands. And eventually the consumers will come on board.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and congratulations on all the success with Bumbu. I'd like to take a step back and talk about another branding success, which is possibly one of the greatest branding successes in the history of the wine industry, and that of course is Armand de Brignac. If you don't mind telling us about the origins of Armand de Brignac, also known as Ace of Spades, of course.
It's funny, Eric, the way you describe it today, because when I think back when we created the brand, people laugh. How can you compete against Cristal and be more expensive than Dom and go against Krug? I remember Jancis Robinson, who writes for the Financial Times, said she wouldn't try the brand because of the way it looked. She just assumed it was not a great brand. So we had it was a beast to get people over the hump, to understand the brand and the mentality. It's a brand that we thought we can compete at the higher end. We think that there's those people, and Eric, I'm going to assume you're one of them, that vintage is the end all. Vintage is the most important category for a brand or a wine or a champagne. To me, it's the easiest thing to make. You just age it and you're done when it comes to a vintage. To me, the hard part and the beauty is creating a vintage. And we use 3 different years. Vintage to me and non-vintage to me is it's like an artist who's got one color to paint with. That's vintage. But if you've got a rainbow of colors, you can do so much more on the canvas. Or if you're a chef and you've got one spice to work with versus multiple spices. And it was hard in the beginning trying to convince people why a non-vintage should be this expensive. It should be this expensive. It's harder to make. It's different years. So you get a different profile out of it. So it was a multi-vintage brand that eventually the likes of Essie Avalon to Jancis Robinson finally tasted. She said she said her favorite brand, which is Paul Roger, I think 99 was her favorite. She said that brand was dull and diffused compared to Armand de Brignac. So we had something in the bottle, we had something in the name and the storytelling, and it looks and stands out. And today it's one of the most successful brands now owned by LVMH, and we're super proud of it.
Yeah, and you should be. It's an amazing success story. I remember, I think it was 2006 was the year that you launched, and being a bit of a doubting Thomas myself because the packaging was so unique, and some
It's
might say,
opulent.
yeah, opulent and obviously expensive, and a lot of people assume that it was all packaging and that the wine in the bottle was not going to measure up, but of course that was not true. And
Correct.
I'm
We were
sorry.
rated the number one champagne in the world by Essie Avalon's entity, which is it's a champagne focused publication. It's amazing, Eric, just because of the fact that everyone laughed in the beginning. No one thought this would be a brand. And we pushed through, and the brand today is probably in 100 plus countries. It's considered the highest end of the category. I think one of the best things we did was make it more expensive than Cristal because price matters. And look, lo and behold, it's now owned by LVMH. So that tells you what they think of the brand.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I think it would be important to talk about the Jay-Z connection, talk about how it became known as Ace of Spades and became the darling of the hip hop world. Can you give us some background there?
Sure. The name itself is Armand de Brignac. I would say probably half of consumers today think Armand de Brignac and Ace of Spades are two different brands. It's not. It's the same brand. We knew it's the one problem with French brands is the name, the pronunciation can be really, really difficult. And Armand de Brignac is a mouthful. And we decided to use the Ace of Spades logo because it goes with the A, and it's the highest card. It's the highest. It's considered the best, and it became the nickname became stronger than the actual name, and people refer to it as Ace of Spades. And if you look at my packaging and all my brands, it's pretty simple. It's simplistic. It's very less is more mentality. Bumbu with the X on it, Douce with the double cross, Bel Air, to me, the shield, and just the name Bel Air, Deacon with this old world mask that has its own story. And I've always been, to me, one of the things I learned from my first brand is I can't fake it. I can't lean into categories or lean into promotion or lean into people that I don't necessarily, I don't connect with. In the hip hop world, I love hip hop. I love music. If I was into country, that would be my focus. I'm not into country. That's not my lane, but hip hop is. And Jay was one of the first people to see the brand and understood the brand. And he was a great inspiration for what we've done and became a great partnership with Jay. But it's not because I approached him. It's not because I approached anybody in this space. It's that they found the brand and discover brands first. That to me is the power of a brand. If I'm schlepping it to everybody and trying to convince you to come on board, and that's one of the things my father taught me. You can't force it on people. If you're forcing it on people, they're not going to accept it. And sometimes saying no is the most powerful sales tool. So if you imagine Eric and Bridget, those first few years, if I tasted everybody who wanted to taste the brand, I'd have nothing to sell. Nothing.
Yeah.
We didn't taste anybody. Never. We never tasted anybody. And it's the power of saying no, I can't do it. And if I force it on people, it's not going to work. And it's about discovery. That's what we love.
Yeah. I love that. You've built so many incredible brands. You must really trust your gut. You have that natural instinct for it. And I love that you trust it, Brett, because a lot of people don't, they don't trust their intuition. They don't trust like that gut feeling just to kind of go for it. So, with that said, was there like a specific like aha moment when you really knew that Bumbu could just be this global brand?
No, my answer is I don't know. I'm always focused on the next thing or what we're doing. So it's hard for me to reflect, and maybe I'll do that later. To me, it is gut. You know, I won't say the company name, but we had a brand that from a taste for what a big company will do is they'll have studies and they'll hire consultants and they'll look at data. And to me, it's about, as you said, Bridget, it's trusting your instincts and your gut. Is it better than the competitors? Does it look different? Does it act different? Does it have a better story? I can answer those questions. I think, doing a study, spending millions of dollars trying to figure out if the name makes sense, spending $1 million to see if the profile to make sense, we're not going to do. And that was based on my first brand where we ended up listening to everybody else and listening to how they built their brands versus trying to just follow our own instincts. And we made tons of mistakes and we still do, but it's following our own instincts. And my attitude is if anybody's going to fuck this up, I want it to be me.
It's really incredible. And could you give some advice for entrepreneurs out there who are thinking about it? It doesn't have to be right in the spirit space because I think that it's really hard. In fact, I know it's really hard for folks just to take that leap, to trust their gut.
Yeah, I think in the spirit space, And it's one of the things we learned the hard way is take the US. The US is literally 50 different markets. It's 50 different, think of it as 50 different countries. Would you ever launch a brand in 50 countries if you could? No, it'd be impossible. And I think a lot of times what happens in our industry with small companies is they think they need to be national day one. They need to be everywhere. I don't know how you can be everywhere without a sales force, without a team, without people pushing your brands. So that's something we learned early on with brand building, where we made that mistake. We thought we should be everywhere. We thought we should be in Vegas. And Vegas, they'll see the brand in Vegas and go home and ask for it. No one does that. No one does that. I'd rather be at the local pub, going back to that same pub over and over and over again in Kansas, and we're gonna nail them. We're gonna get them on board eventually because we're going back to the same people over and over. It's funny. It's a saying we have is sometimes having no plan is better than having a plan, and that's because you hold on to what your plan is for the next year or two, and if you're wrong, you're going to be wrong for the next year or two. That's too late. So you have to pivot constantly and pivot quickly. I didn't expect, if I use Bumbu as an example, I expected the US to be our biggest market. I didn't know that Europe would turn into this huge market for us. So what did I do? I pivoted and focused on Europe first. The US will come. We're the number one brand in rum in the United States, but the growth we're experiencing outside the US is enormous. So what do? I'm focusing on outside the US, or I'm focusing on specific states that I see as successful. I think trusting your own instincts and why you're jumping into this industry is just as important as getting advice from somebody else. You can listen to them, and maybe there's a nugget or two that you can take away. But at the end of the day, it's got to be your call. It's your call of how you're going to do something.
Indeed. Brett, can you take us back a step again and tell us a little bit about the inception of Luc Belaire sparkling wine? What gave you the inspiration to start this brand after the success of Ace of Spades?
So, to me, there was a few different rationales for it. One, I love rosé. Love rosé. I'm a huge Provence lover of rosé still wine. And we started thinking, wait a minute, where does the best rosé come from? It comes from Provence. Everybody thinks that. It's Provence rosé. And we decided that we wanted to create, and when it comes specifically to rosé, and Eric, you'll know this, it's not women, it's men, it's women, it's everybody. Everybody is drinking rosé. So rosé is its own category in itself. And my goal and our goal was to create a rosé coming out of Provence, but start with rosé. And that's uniquely different because any champagne house, any sparkling house will always have the Brut first as the main line. Then they'll come out with a rosé or a Blanc de Blanc or a single vintage or a demi-sec, or they'll repackage a demi-sec and call it ice. But for me, it was, I want to create a rosé first, to be known for rosé. And that's what we started with. We started with the Black Bottle Rosé. And that was our first launch. And I remember people telling us, even Southern told us, we were with Southern in New York, and the head of Southern at the time, or the head of wines at the time, said, you can't compete against Moet and Veuve. You can't compete and put rosé in a black bottle because you can't see the liquid. And the earlier Brett would have listened to them. I would listen to them and change my packaging and change the approach. But we said, no, let's focus on what we believe can work. And it did. I think our first year we sold 10,000 cases just in New York. And I think the goal was 500 cases, and they thought it wouldn't work. That's the normal reception when it comes to new brands. People think it won't work. We put our focus into it. It's working. And it's now a global brand. Today, Belaire is probably in close to 100 countries. We're the number one in champagne sparkling in Vietnam, number one in Korea. I expect to be number one across Africa. We sell more rosé in the United States than Moet and Veuve do in rosé. And then we launched the Brut, and then we launched our own demi-sec, a little bit sweeter for rosé and a little bit sweeter for the gold. And then we did something even crazier, as we came out with a Belaire Blue, which everyone said, again, this is not going to work. Eric and Bridget, if you go to France today, our biggest SKU in France is Belaire Blue. We have French people drinking blue liquid.
It's amazing. Hard to imagine, but true. Well, you really did everything
You,
right
you,
with Luke Belair too. The name is a bit mysterious. Who is this mysterious Luke Belair? The product is in the bottle. The packaging is gorgeous, and I think even more importantly, your strategic price point really was a key here.
it is. It's a huge. To us, it's needed in the category because you've got, at the lower end, you've got your U.S. sparklings like a Corbel. You've got your Cavas as the next price
But
point. You've got your Prosecco at the next price point, and there's a massive gap between Prosecco and your Moet and Veuve, and we put ourselves right in the middle there. We're probably number one at a $30 space, which is amazing from a price point. And then we did something that's unusual. We line priced them all.
mm,
And that's something that doesn't happen in the champagne space. Your Brut is one price, your Rosé is more expensive, your Demi-Sec is more expensive, your Blanc de Blanc is more expensive. We're all line priced. And
mm,
that's something we wanted to do to give the consumers a chance to buy it themselves. And it's worked. And again, at the end of the day, if it doesn't taste good, if it's not better than something else you're already drinking, it's not going to work. It's in the taste. It does work.
indeed, absolutely, I agree 100%. It's funny. I was just looking at a shelf set the other day in one of our supermarkets here, looking at the Luc Belair set, and it's beautiful when you have all these different colors side by side, all line priced. You've got to try more than one. You can't just take the.
Oh, you have to. And we tell people, we tell our trade and our industry, and it's a critical one. Shelf space creates more volume. It doesn't actually cannibalize anything. What it does is if you go from 1 to 5 facings, you're going to increase your depletions by 1,000%. It won't cannibalize anything. What it does is it creates a legitimate brand that people want to try.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk about, because you have such an adventurous spirit, Brett, and I love that about you, and you're not afraid to like we've talked about it, right? To go for it. Can you talk about, was there like an early risk that you took that just really paid off? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And look at what happened. And I know we've cited quite a few, but was there something that just is such a standout that you remember?
It's a good question. I think this may sound strange, but I'm an old school brand builder. I believe you need to get in the account and sell your story and tell your story. And that has worked with all our brands, all our brands. There's things about each one individually that may have worked and helped us, but times change. And those things that worked 5 years ago don't work today. 10 years ago, that doesn't work today. So when we had Ace of Spades, we didn't have, the best we had was magazines, newspapers, and blogs for advertising. That's it. And videos. That's it. So we didn't have the internet. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have these things. So what you have to do is adapt. But what has never changed is that old school brand building where I've got a team of 200 people out there selling every single day. And we need our distributors selling every single day and supporting our salespeople. Old school brand building is getting in the account, pitching them, selling them, tasting them. You got to show that bottle to them, show the bottle consumers because they won't recognize it unless they see the package. That's worked and continues to work for 20 plus years.
It's a great story, and it's very true, Brett. There's nothing that can beat the old-fashioned method of building brands and just getting out there and going after it day after day.
Yeah, and I don't know, for both of you, I don't know what the magic sauce is. I don't. Meaning there's one thing that's worked and I've got to go do that marketing gimmick, that campaign, whatever it is. I don't know what that is, but I do know if we beat the street every day and give it time, Bumbu may not, taking Bumbu as the example, if I show you the growth of the brand, it's amazing. But if you were here 10 years ago and 9 years ago and 8 years ago, a big company would say, Jesus, why even focus on this? It's so small. But what happens is they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that small thing is now something you need to focus on because it's big. That people don't have time. They need it to happen overnight. I don't know how to do that.
It's so true. Can you tell us about some of the other spirits that are in your portfolio besides Bumbu?
We have I know people can't see it, but we've got a brand called the Deacon
Yes.
whiskey. It's in a beautiful copper bottle. It's got a retro label, which is this mask. It dates back to the plague, where the plague doctors would wear a mask and inhale alcohol because it was assumed that alcohol was the aquavit. It would protect them. But to me, it's just cool looking. It looks neat and it has a story in itself. It's a scotch. It's a peated scotch, comes from Island Speyside. It is very much, it's smoky, it's peated, it is different tasting, but the beauty is of the taste is you mix it in any cocktail, whether you want an old fashioned or a Moscow Mule or a whiskey and Coke, you still taste the profile coming through. It doesn't get lost. It was just rated, just got a rating last week out in Canada from the Whiskey Explorer, the best whiskey in the world. It was rated in New Zealand a gold medal. It's the fastest growing whiskey in Japan right now, which is amazing considering the Japanese know whiskey better than most countries. A really cool brand. It reminds me of Burning Man. It gives off that feeling of Burning Man. That's what I like. That's what I wanted to personify. The Deacon literally, its name, its story. The Deacon means you're the best at your craft. If you're the
Mm.
best mixologist, you're considered the Deacon. If you're the best marketing person, you're the Deacon. If you're the best bartender, you're the Deacon. So everything has meaning to us. But that's our newest little baby. It's now in 50 countries, which is amazing. And we can do that today. We have people in the markets who can get that done. But super proud of this brand. And it's starting the same way. As much success as we've had, people still doubt us. They still don't think brands, new brands in these big spaces work. I think new brands are the lifeblood of our industry. And if I can get people on board another new brand, it creates excitement. And that's what the Deacon is.
Yeah. You know what, Brett, thank you so much. What a legacy that you're leaving the beverage world. It is just incredible. Just incredible. And with that said, I want to thank you so much for coming on Served Up. We just want to wish you some great health and a lot of peace. This has been just an incredible hour that you've spent with us.
No, thank you. There's nothing more I love than talking about industry and hopefully giving some support and love to those people who want to get into the business and what they can do to make their own successes.
Yes. Thanks for the words of wisdom for everybody out there listening, because you truly are a living, breathing example of how to go about building great brands.
There's other people
Yeah.
can do it. I've done it, and they've done their own way. So mine is just my way. How's that? There's
Well,
lots
it's
of good
working.
ideas.
It's working. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you,
Cheers.
guys.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.